Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Wrestling Doesn't Make Sense. It's the show where me and John talk about pro wrestling and the silliness that's involved in it. A lot of it doesn't make any sense. One thing that occurs a lot in pro wrestling is the need to band together with some of your peers into a faction or a group, a stable, a clique. I don't know what other terms there are for such a thing. Some best friends. That's it. That's all I got.
Yeah.
So there's been some really good stables in wrestling history. Everybody would say, first off, you would say the Four Horsemen, right?
Mm-hmm.
You gotta say, because they're one of the best stables in history. But you've got other DX as well. Was a really good group.
Yeah.
NWO in conception.
Mm-hmm.
Was a really good group. Maybe not by the end of it,
Definitely
but
not.
the core group of it, the core idea was there. Evolution, Triple H and his friends sure know how to buddy up together.
Yeah. No coincidence that Ric Flair was involved with that as well after the Four Horsemen.
True, that is true. But in the midst of that, I think you'll find that there's a big gap between the Four Horsemen and Evolution.
Mm.
Ric Flair himself has found himself in plenty of not good factions.
Yeah, you can definitely say that.
So that's what today's episode is going to be about. It's going to be about factions that weren't as good as some of the ones we've just mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
And Ric Flair, God bless him, has definitely been in his fair share. I mean, he's been in his share of fucking great stables, and he's been in his fair share of not so great stables. Off the top of my head, I would imagine a lot of people are going to say the Millionaires Club.
Yeah, definitely.
Straight off the top of my head, because that was in 2000 WCW. In about April, they decided to vacate all the belts and split the entire roster into two, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Which was the New Blood and the Millionaires Club. And the New Blood had all of the new kind of younger talent, shall we say. And the Millionaires Club had the kind of older, more established wrestlers, right?
Well, in theory, yeah.
Yes, in theory. That was the angle they were going for, right? And obviously, if that was the angle you're going for, if you're a smart booker, you would make the young guys the faces, because they're going to be the new face of the company. They're gonna, they're gonna uprise against all these old guys like Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair, who have legitimately have been the face of WCW for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Time for the New Blood to jump in, right? But not if Vince Russo's booking that ship. The New Blood are the bad guys, and the good guys are the same old people we've seen on TV for the last 10 years.
Yeah, essentially.
Interesting angle. Which led to such classics as Hulk Hogan versus Billy Kidman.
Mm-hmm.
With Billy Kidman as a heel.
Yeah, and they give Billy Kidman the win, and then literally the next time he's on TV is on that Thunder episode we watched for Watch Along, where he's in a gauntlet match against the other New Blood members, and he gets pinned by Scott Steiner within 60 seconds of entering the match. So it's okay.
Scott Steiner, who is in the New Blood.
Yeah, of course he is.
But yet, who's fucking older than WCW? He's been wrestling longer than that company existed.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, on the Millionaires Club, I believe, were Buff Bagwell, I think.
Yeah.
Was he, or was he in the New Blood?
Oh.
Because he was a heel.
Yeah.
But then again, he was in the New Blood, right? Buff Bagwell and Shane Douglas, because they won the tag championships around that time.
That's right, yeah.
Your New Blood, Scott Steiner, Buff Bagwell, Shane Douglas, what the fuck? But let me ask you this. We've talked about the Millionaires Club, and But do you remember the Magnificent Seven?
Wow, that's the faction that was sort of running WCW towards the end of WCW, wasn't it? Like,
Yeah.
was it Ric Flair when he was the CEO or like in storyline CEO of WCW? And he had like Jeff Jarrett and I think the Steiners were with him. Oh, and like Road Warrior Animal randomly as well.
Yeah. I don't know. Is that 7? I mean,
I'm
Ric
sure
Flair,
there's
the
more.
Steiners, and Animal, and Scott's. Wait, there were 7 people in it anyway. That's all we know. Look how good that
Buff
stable
Bagwell
is.
was in that one as well.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Having people... Dude, if you put Buff Bagwell in your stable, you're not going to have a good time. He was the reason the NWO tanked.
Mm-hmm.
He was the reason the New Blood tanked. And he was the reason the Magnificent Seven was never heard of again. Like, what the fuck did they do? Right? They were a faction in the dying days of WCW. It was nothing those guys could have done. Save that ship. Which is funny because if you ever watch the end days of WCW, it's like they don't even care that the ship's going down. They're like, we're not even going to try and rewrite this course. We're plowing straight into that fucking iceberg, baby.
Yeah.
You know, God bless them. Did you have that one written down? Is that one of your stables?
No.
Oh, so you remembered the Millionaires Club. Not the Millionaires Club, Magnificent Seven.
Yeah, I remember it more because of the name, because I thought it sounded pretty cool, because obviously it is named after the movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, like as a faction, it was kind of a weird idea. Like 7 singles guys all grouped together. It's like, well, why would they all group together? Like, what's the benefit for the ones who aren't fighting for the world title or like other titles? Because there's not enough titles to go around, surely, for 7 of them. So
right, and also out of the 7 of them, how many of them were gunning for titles? I know Scott Steiner was, but I don't know if that was before the Magnificent Seven or after or during the Magnificent Seven. Rick Steiner, I think, might have been too. But like, you know, Flair and Animal weren't gunning after titles by that point. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
What was the benefit of that stable? Like, what the fuck? Well, that was the thing. You had said a little quote from JR. Jim Ross about the benefits of a good stable, and basically the purpose of a stable is to elevate the people in the stable. At least one of them, right? There's got to be some kind of purpose to these guys grouping together, and it's usually to get one or all of the members of the group over. For example, you could point at Evolution and say that Triple H doesn't necessarily need to get over, but him being the leader of a group suits his character, and it really helped Randy Orton and Batista. Same with Ric Flair. Like, Ric Flair was the kind of like experience of the group. It kept him in the spotlight, but it didn't necessarily get him over. It was about getting the other guys over, which it did pretty well. You know, but in a thing like the Magnificent Seven, who's getting over? Who's the guy? Buff Bagwell. I think we've had enough of the Buff. That's a good catchphrase. Did they ever use that? I don't know if they used that. They should have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Had enough of the Buff.
Print that on a T-shirt.
Yeah, this is why they went out of business. Refused to listen to me. So those other stables you kind of mentioned, they didn't have like a purpose. Like the Magnificent, now I'm getting them all confused. The Millionaires Club and the New Blood, right? Because they split the entire roster in 2. Like nobody's getting over that way. It doesn't make any sense. It's ridiculous. Plus, there were people who weren't on either side anyway. And also, doesn't it seem like exactly what Eric Bischoff said was going to happen with the NWO? Like, isn't that the point? Isn't that why he said there were 1 million members of the NWO? Was because, we're just going to split the roster into 2. I'm like, okay, why didn't you?
Yeah, I think that was Eric Bischoff's idea at the time, wasn't it? That he was going to have like a WCW show and an NWO show, and then sort of build them up as 2 separate identities, and then you could kind of do crossovers and create like interesting storylines between them and whatnot. Sort of, I guess, like Raw and SmackDown with the brand split and everything, and how like you get that, or you're supposed to only get that one night a year, like Survivor Series, where they cross over and clash and whatnot. But obviously that never really worked out because WWE kind of quickly found out that they were like burning feuds pretty quickly and needed to create their own storylines. So yeah.
But like, why did he never do that? He added members to the NWO till they were a ridiculous size, and his excuse was he was going to do this, and then he didn't do it. And then 2 years after the NWO were dead, he was like, "Now we're doing it. Now we're going to split the roster in two." Like what? What?
Well, I think the NWO as well, because they did try like a couple of just like NWO branded shows, like it was uncensored. And
sold out. Was sold out? Was it sold out? Maybe it wasn't sent. No, it's uncensored was an old one. I think was it sold out?
It might have been sold out. Yeah, I think you're right actually.
It's the one with the fucking they're driving like bin lorries to the ring.
Yeah.
Whatever. Kevin Nash was like, how is that going to get us over?
Yeah.
How do we look cool hanging off the side of a bin lorry? I'm like, the man makes a good point. Like, how again, how is that going to get anybody over? Have you seen that show? Did we talk about that on like one of our shitty shows?
I don't think so.
All right, that sucks. It really sucked. Yeah, don't watch it. It's just nonsense. So like the NWO, a great stable in theory. The idea of it with these 3 core members, even when they expanded it a little bit, you're like, this all still kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Like Ted DiBiase as their financer, that makes sense. X-Pac in there, that makes sense. Even putting the Giant in there was kind of cool, although it didn't really make a whole lot of sense because he was fighting Hulk Hogan like 6 months before that. Right? But when you have like those like 4 or 5 like key members, I'm like, that's cool, that's a group, right?
Yeah.
When you start adding enough people that the other people have their own theme song, I think you went too far. Like it, and also they were constantly referred to as the NWO B team.
Yeah.
And you knew nobody gave a fuck when those guys came out. So like, if your faction is so big that it splits into 2, and you can still tell who the cool guys are and who the cool guys aren't, what's the point? Like, what's the point of having those guys?
Yeah, exactly.
There's no point because nobody. I'm gonna say this again. Nobody came to that show to see Buff Bagwell, right? Like, adding those guys to the NWO didn't make them cool. It made the NWO less cool. Absolutely. And that's the trick I don't think they figured out. You know what I mean? I thought having Eric Bischoff as like their leader kind of made sense, right? Because he was inside the organization. That was but that was also kind of the thing Ted DiBiase was doing. So you didn't need 2 of those guys. And then after that, it got all complicated, and there was too many people, and there's too many things. You're like, well, it was fun while it lasted.
Yeah.
And it lasted roughly 4 months. Well, by the beginning of '97, I think there was already like, I don't know what the fuck's happening anymore.
Yeah, well, I think it started off with Vincent being the first one that they drafted in. And then it just started going downhill from there pretty quickly. Like Buff Bagwell, obviously. IRS when he was Michael Wall Street. Big Boss Man when he was Bubba Rogers, and Scott Norton, and it's just a whole lot of people just ended up joining it for no reason. It didn't benefit them, didn't benefit the group. It just kind of, well, I guess it benefited them from a merch standpoint because they probably got a bit of the merch money and whatnot, and that kind of thing. But it's just rubbish.
I think Scott Norton did all right because he went to Japan and was like a head of NWO Japan.
Yeah.
Basically. So he had a great time. That's another thing I liked about the NWO was that they had this whole faction in Japan. This whole, they did that. They were like, yep, NWO Japan. and like neither side acknowledged the other one, except for Scott Norton being there.
Yeah.
They had nothing to do with each other.
Yeah.
You know, which reminds me, topically, about this current Bullet Club thing that's going on. The Bullet Club were infamous wrestling stable that they I don't know, when did they join together? 2016? Was it before that?
Must have been before that, because I think the original incarnation was Prince Devitt, wasn't it? So
Yeah,
yeah.
that would have been. Yeah, he would have. Yeah, so it was like David and Carl Anderson, I think, was one of the original members.
Yeah.
And who the fuck else?
I want to say Bad Luck Fail and
Yes,
whoever his partner was it Tamatonga?
I was thinking Tamatonga. So let's roll with that because that's the one we think is. But it was a very small group when it started, and the whole point of it was like these were these foreigners in Japan who weren't getting on TV and weren't getting the same breaks that the Japanese guys were getting. And so they banded together and formed the Bullet Club and became this cool group of heels who were doing a lot of stuff in Japan that they didn't really do. You know, like they were a real heel group and they were doing a lot of the kind of the more theatrical American shenanigans and getting away with it, which a whole lot of Japanese, the audience hadn't really seen a lot of in their companies. So like, this is awesome, right? Again, in theory, it's because it worked for those guys. Those guys got over again, like the NWO, like the three guys who were already over. They did really well in the NWO. So like it worked. The Bullet Club worked in Japan originally because it got those guys over. And you know, Prince Devitt went on to be Finn Balor, who's doing very well for himself these days. Sidebar: did you see Takeover?
I did, yes.
That main event, man.
Hell of a match.
Oh, so good. Pete Dunne versus Finn Balor. I gotta say, whenever Finn Balor was on the main roster, didn't care much for him. But son of a gun, since he's been in NXT, he has been the guy to watch. His matches have been incredible. And Pete
very
Dunne,
intense as well.
Yeah, like physical and just the shit I like watching. You know? Oh, it was great, man.
Yeah.
That and the Johnny Gargano match was very good.
Well, I thought the whole show was pretty good. Like the only match I thought wasn't blow away was the women's title match. But even then, I didn't hate it. I didn't think it was bad or anything. I just thought it wasn't on the same sort of quality as the rest of the show. But
okay, I thought the singles matches were really good. I thought that the tag matches were a little spotty. Like the women's match just didn't click for me. Like.
Oh, no way.
It was really good, and I love all the people in it. But it just seemed like spots being done instead of like a match, which is funny on that show because you had, you know, the singles matches were like matches. You know, they were like, this is it. There's, you know, it looked like they were figuring it out in the ring. It all chained together. It all made sense. You know, and I thought the tag matches, especially like the end of the men's match, I'm like, this is. You know, you're kicking out everything here. But yeah, dude, those matches are really, really good. Those two singles guys. So Finn Balor, you know, he's went on to do pretty well for himself. But then after that, the group went through a lot of changes.
Yeah.
A lot of different lineups. Kenny Omega has been in it. AJ Styles, the Young Bucks. Luke Gallows.
Yeah. Like Marty Scurll and
somehow what the fuck?
Yeah.
I never got that one. Why is Marty Scurll there?
Yeah, who the fuck knows?
Yeah, I don't fucking know. He's not there no more.
Yeah.
Who did you say? Adam Cole. Yes.
Adam Cole. Yeah.
Yes. So like, there's been a lot of people in this revolving door of characters, and then recently. Because it was pretty much a Japanese-only stable. Since then, a lot of those wrestlers, because they are, you know, based in America or Europe, whenever they come over to main organizations in America, people are like, it's going to be a Bullet Club union. Like people said it in WWE whenever AJ Styles and Gallows and Anderson were around, like, it's gonna be a Bullet Club reunion. Even with Finn Balor, they tease shit, and you're like, cool, but who cares?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't want to be that guy, but like, that already happened. They already did that, right? Like, the NWO didn't work when they brought that back, you know, and they already did the Bullet Club. What would the Bullet Club do in the WWE?
Exactly.
Like, it doesn't, you know, it's not interesting. It's been done, right? As you know, George Harrison once said on the Simpsons, been done. Don't need to.
It's also like we've seen WWE's attempts to bring in the NWO, like the 3 original members, and the way they use them, it kind of suggests that, you know, if they had have pulled the trigger on like a Bullet Club reunion, like, you know, they would have dropped the ball with that as well.
Oh God, yes. If we've learned one lesson in all of our years of watching wrestling, is that the WWE will happily give up on an open goal. You know what I mean? They'll see it and be like, nope, fuck that. I'm gonna punch myself in the dick instead. You know, it's never an easy process for those guys.
Mm-hmm.
So recently, in All Elite Wrestling, they have opened the forbidden door, that's never gonna get irritating.
Yeah.
Open the forbidden door to Impact and wrestlers in Japan. And so what we've seen there is All Elite Wrestling's Kenny Omega has buddied up with Impact's Gallows and Anderson, and has a kind of tenuous relationship with Kenta at the moment, who has come from New Japan.
And the Young Bucks as well.
Well, I don't know if I don't know what here's the thing, dude. If you can tell me what the fuck goes on in that company, feel free. But are the Young Bucks aligned with them now? Because they've all been together for like what, 2 months, and I can't keep track. Are the Young Bucks their friends or not? I don't fucking.
Well, the way they're playing it is so weird at the moment, because it's like
what a surprise.
Yeah, they brought in Gallows and Anderson, big shock, blah blah blah. But then the Young Bucks come out and they did the whole too sweet together, and it looked like they were on the same page. And then ever since then, it's just been a case of like Don Callis or Gallows and Anderson just being dicks to the Young Bucks, who are just like, well, what's going on? And, you know, they just want to kind of hang out with Kenny Omega and, like, you know, be buddies with him. But I don't think they're fully in on the rest of the shenanigans. And, like, they definitely aren't together with Don Callis, because they supposedly, like, punched him in the face and gave him a black eye, like, a couple of weeks back. So, yeah, it's all weird.
Well, the point is, yeah, dude, I can't even fucking follow that shit. I have no idea. But it seems like they're alluding to a Bullet Club reunion. I don't know. Have they specifically said Bullet Club's back together in America?
No, because they don't own the rights to the Bullet Club. That's it belongs to New Japan. So
classy.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. So, cut to Japan, where some of the current members of the Japanese brand of the Bullet Club don't appear to be too happy with their American counterparts.
Mm-hmm.
This is interesting. I gotta say, dude, I don't know if this is a work or a shoot, because they seem legitimately annoyed.
Yeah.
I'm like, if this is a fucking work, then well played. Fucking hire those guys. They know how to fucking do business. They know what they're talking about, right? Although why the fuck nobody has picked those guys up blows my mind. Fucking Tama Tonga over it. Well, I guess you can't give them a live mic. That's probably why I haven't picked them up. So yeah, those guys they in Japan don't seem to appreciate this new Bullet Club or this expanded Bullet Club, because they're like, well, fuck you guys. Very interesting, I gotta say. I'd like to see where that goes. If it leads to some kind of shitty match in All Elite Wrestling or Impact, then I'm not that interested. I watched Moxley and Kenta. Was it Moxley and Kenta?
No,
Moxley and Archer
yes.
versus Kenta and Kenny Omega. Kenny Omega and Kenta don't seem to be getting along too well.
No.
Interesting. But the angle is, they both hate John Moxley, so that's why they're on a team. Okay. Okay, right. I understand that bit. Why is Lance Archer tagging with John Moxley? Weren't they enemies? Aren't they enemies?
Exactly. It's not really been explained.
Another thing that annoyed me, right? And this is probably just me being silly, right? But Moxley comes out with the United States Championship from New Japan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's part of the feud between him and Kenta. But has he worn that belt to the ring before this? Because what it looked like now is he was the All Elite Wrestling Champion for months. Kenny Omega beats him, and now he's still coming out with a title. Like, you know what I mean?
Mm.
And usually, funny enough, All Elite Wrestling are usually the guys that can explain that shit the best. You know? But it would have made sense if had he come out with both belts. All of this would have made way more sense, because then people will visually know exactly what the feud's about, instead of just Moxie coming out with a different belt. You know, like what happens if Kenta beats him for that belt? What belt's he gonna bring out on All Elite Wrestling next week? You know,
make up his own championship. Why not?
Right? Fucking, Taz did it.
Yeah.
And look where that's gone. Look at all that shit. Oh, sidebar, right? I might cut this bit out because it's not to do with... Well, it is to do with stables. Perfect. That's a tie-in. Team Taz.
Mm-hmm.
Taz, great guy. Great mic, right? Great promo. Brian Cage, great look. Very athletic. Could go places with that guy. Ricky Starks.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a little bit of him in NWA. He's pretty good.
Yep.
Who else is it? Is it Willie Mack?
Not Willie Mack. No, it's Powerhouse Hobbs.
Powerhouse Hobbs. Okay. I don't know why. Okay. Is that the group?
Well, and there's Taz's son Hook as well, apparently.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. He's. Don't forget about Hook.
Mm-hmm.
Don't want to forget about that guy. All right. So, All Elite Wrestling are not good with their factions.
No.
Because they have a shit ton of them and nobody cares about any of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we will get onto that in a second, because the WWE have done that before in the past. Yes, they have, and we will definitely get onto that in this show. But at the moment, they have like 40 stables, and who gives a shit about any of them? You got the Dark Order, you've got the Nightmare Family. What the fuck is going on there? They just keep adding members.
Yeah, random people.
Fucking, like, who cares? Today's new member is our hairdresser. Like, the guy who made me soup yesterday. He's part of the group. It's not nonsense, right? There's too many people. There's whatever Jericho's thing is called.
The Inner Circle.
But who cares about that either? Like, look at them. Bunch of idiots. Like, who would give... What other stables are we missing? There's definitely more. What the fuck? Oh, I was thinking of another one. It's gone. Anyway, they have a lot of stables and they don't go anywhere. So, when I was watching All Elite Wrestling the other day, I don't know why I did. I think probably to see the main event, which I didn't like. Because the main event seemed like all four of those dudes. Yeah. It's like a kind of Japanese reunion. Yeah. And it's just like them fucking brawling in the audience for some reason.
Yep.
It sucked. Okay, so get this. Darby Allin has a match against Joey Janela.
Yeah.
That goes like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
You can't put Joey Janela down in 20 minutes. And then he's like, yeah, that was great. So then later on, Tony Schiavone is interviewing Sting, who is there to look after Darby Allin.
Yes, he's watching his back.
Yeah, the loner who doesn't need anybody watching his back has Sting, a 60-year-old man, out here watching his back. And guess what? That still didn't work, because Team Taz kidnapped Darby Allin.
Yeah.
What I hate about that was they just cut to Taz in a car, like, hey, look what we did. And, the camera moves to Darby Allin just in a body bag. I'm like, you're not even going to show us You're just gonna show Darby Allin pretending to be dead? Are you serious? So they kidnapped Darby Allin, right? Which means that Sting looks like a fucking idiot.
Mm-hmm.
So does Darby Allin. Like, was he so drained from his match with Joey Janela that this time when you jump him, it finally works, right? So I'm like, well, this is ridiculous.
Well, the thing is though, like every time that Team Taz has faced off with Darby and
fucking
Sting,
ran away.
yeah, even though there's like the numbers advantage and they're like, in the prime of their careers and stuff, and Sting's an old man with a baseball bat who probably can't move very well.
Right.
It's like they run away every single time.
Unbelievable, right? So Team Taz also looking like idiots, right? So all of this happens. Fair enough, kidnappings. It's happened before. George Harrison once said, "It's been done," and then, like almost straight away after that, I think it was because I was watching like the hour-long edited version on ITV or whatever. But straight after that, it cuts to a pre-tape with Tony Schiavone where he's interviewing Jungle Boy after somebody kidnapped Marco Stunt. And I'm like, what? Are you? They did the kidnap. Oh, FTR. FTR kidnapped Marco Stunt.
That's right, yeah.
Right? So not only do we have 2 kidnappings on the same show, but the people who have been kidnapped are 2 of the smallest people on the roster. And the people doing the kidnapping are like these big, tough, imposing dudes. What?
I will say, I don't know if Darby's been kidnapped or if he just got dragged along for a bit and probably got let go afterwards.
What? Why not kidnap him?
Because FTR. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Oh yeah, you don't want to copy those, dude. Remember whenever they left WWE because they thought that WWE didn't take tag team wrestling seriously? Sports-based wrestling. Anyway, I'm not gonna. That's my little bit. I find every podcast I find a bit to do it in, but for the sake of balance, let's slag off the WWE now because an incredibly infamous angle. I think it was in '98. Was it? Maybe it was like '97 going into '98. Was the Gang Wars.
Yeah.
It's infamous because we all know what happened, right? We all know it. We've seen the teams evolve, but not a goddamn thing happened.
Yeah.
Like that went on for like a year and a half. Not a fucking thing happened. Who won?
Well, Nation. I'd say the Nation won.
But the Nation won. But like, the Nation were around before the Gang Wars even started.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it all kind of kicked off because Savio Vega and Crush were like members of the Nation.
Yes.
But then they like inadvertently cost Farouk a win against the Undertaker for the title, I think it was, because they were arguing on the outside. So Farouk like kicked them out of the group and pretty much like rebooted the Nation of Domination, and that inspired Crush to start the Disciples of Apocalypse with Chains and 8-Ball and Skull, who did nothing. And then Savio Vega decided to start Los Boricuas.
Do you have the list of people for the Boricuas?
Let's see. It was, I believe, Savio Vega, obviously, as the leader. Miguel Perez.
Yes.
Jose Estrada Jr.
Yes.
And Jesus Castillo.
You got it. All 4 are well remembered in the wrestling business. Yeah. We all remember our favorite Jose Estrada Jr. match. Right? Like, that was the thing. So the Disciples of Apocalypse is almost perfect for being like, it's a good idea, right? Tough biker group, but god damn it, that was the blandest group of people you've ever seen.
Yeah, it had a
Like,
bit of a white supremacist vibe going on as well.
it's a little bit creepy. There's something going on there, you know. But the Barik was like, the idea was to push Savio Vega,
Mm,
obviously, and Savio Vega is a great wrestler.
yeah,
But who were the other guys? Like, what was the point? The only point for them to be there was to just be beside Savio Vega.
essentially, yeah.
There was no plan for them. They weren't going anywhere. The DOA as well. I'm like, it's a good idea in theory, but like, what? Who's getting over with this? Who
Mm.
out of that group? Oh, is this finally Crush's time to shine? I don't think so. He's not over by now, you know. I don't fucking know. So like, hang on. Two of them were the Harris twins.
Yes, that was 8 Ball and Skull.
Okay, who's Chians?
Chains was Brian Lee from ECW fame, and also infamously, he was the fake Undertaker. And yeah, he didn't last very long either.
I wonder why. So yeah, at this point we had the DOA, Disciples of Apocalypse, with the Bariquas. We had the Nation of Domination, which was Farouk and The Rock and Mark Henry, Kama Mustafa, D'Lo Brown.
Yeah, The Rock sort of joined the Nation around August that year. Like that was his first sort of heel turn as well, and I think he pretty much ended up replacing Ahmed Johnson, who had joined the group after feuding with them for ages. And yeah, Ahmed Johnson, man, just one of the worst wrestling experiments of all time, really. Like they tried to push him, they tried to make him a star, and he was like, nah, I don't want to be a star. I'm just gonna go injure other people and injure myself and not improve whatsoever.
Well, the way I heard it was, it's not that he didn't want to be a star. He thought he already was a star. He was like, I'm the best. And they're like, you know, I don't think so. I think Godfather was talking about how Farouk used to just fucking... that was the story. Like, whenever they on screen, like, kicked Ahmed Johnson out of the group, Godfather's like, Farouk's landing in a little bit thick there. You know what I mean? He was really pissed. And surely, if there's one person you don't want to piss off, Ron Simmons.
Absolutely.
I mean, he'll beat the fuck out of you.
Yeah.
do not. We all know. Well, we've seen what happens when you piss off Ron Simmons and Bradshaw.
Mm-hmm.
You've seen that match, right?
Yeah.
With Public Enemy. Oh, have we talked about that one before? I love that so much.
Yeah, that was just painful ass kicking.
It's unbelievable. It's, if you guys haven't seen it, please go out of your way. It's only like 5 minutes long.
Thank God for that as well.
It's really, yeah, somebody would have died. It's only 5 minutes long, and it is a straight up ass whooping from, like, you know, bell to bell, like straight up. The APA, they really pounded some ass that day. Let's put it that way. So yeah, Ahmed Johnson. Did we put him on the Mongo scale? We must have put him on the Mongo scale, right?
I don't think we did, but he deserves to be on there for sure.
He's worse than Mongo, right? We can agree.
Yeah, I think I would say he was.
I don't want to watch that guy in the ring. He had a good look, right? But that's it.
Well, he did when he was in WWF, and then when he went to WCW, he kind of packed on the pounds a little bit and started going by Big T then, and he was definitely putting the emphasis on big.
Oh my goodness! Hey, speaking of the WCW, see that? See, Master segments, and Booker T, of course, who was in the feud with Ahmed Johnson to see who had the rights to the letter T. This is, you know, can't write this shit. Clearly, they couldn't write it either. How about just one of the strangest, in my opinion, it's one of the strangest stables in wrestling history, the Misfits in Action.
Yeah.
Okay, number one, right? You probably know where I'm going with this, but number one, what the fuck And that's the end of the list. Like, who? I already know the answer to this, but
Yeah.
who thought that was a good idea? My goodness. So let me tell you this. All right, Misfits in Action were a stable. What was that, by 2000 in
Yeah.
WCW? Again, a stable from WCW in 2000 that sucks ass. What a surprise! Who could have masterminded all this? So the idea is that they're all army people now. I guess that's their gimmick. They all changed gimmicks. Anybody in the Misfits in Action now has an army gimmick and an appropriate name to go along with that, such as one of the worst names. And by the way, this stable is full of terrible names. But GI Bro.
Yeah.
For Booker T, I'm like, dude, come on, man.
Well, apparently, wasn't that a gimmick he used years and years before?
Probably to much better effect.
Yeah.
Right? So, hey, that's only the beginning. So we got GI Bro as Booker T, Lieutenant Loco, which is, of course, Chavo Guerrero.
Yep.
Corporal Cajun, who is Lash LaRue.
Yeah.
Another absolutely awful name that replaces a slightly better awful name, General Erection, who was Hugh Morris.
Yeah, it's General Hugh G. Rection.
We have to make it incredibly clear that this guy is no more than a dick joke. This is the guy we're going to choose to be United States champion in a couple of months. We really want to make it clear that nobody should ever give a fuck about him.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. What Hugh Morris is a terrible name anyway. But General Rex is not so great. One of my favorites was Major Stash.
Yeah.
It was Van Hammer. And he was apparently Major Stash because originally he was going to be Private Stash. And the joke is it's a marijuana thing. So it's your private stash. Ha ha ha. But Van Hammer didn't want to be a private. He wanted to have a better rank. So they made him Major Stash. And that doesn't make any sense.
Jesus.
Good old Van Hammer, And let's not forget Sergeant AWOL, aka The Wall. like who amongst those people is going to be your world heavyweight champion? General Rection, maybe, or Lieutenant Loco. What? Why Booker T? I can see why they took a lot of those guys and stuck them together. Because what are you gonna do? Like by that point, what are you gonna do with the Wall, right? What are you gonna do with Hugh Morris, right?
Yeah.
But what are you putting Booker T in there for? What the fuck, Booker T? I don't understand that company at all.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason why it's not around anymore, isn't there?
Yeah. Oh, you could argue there's one specific reason.
Yeah.
But he moved on. So that was the Misfits in Action. I got another one from WCW if you want to hear about it. You know all about this because we've definitely talked about this stable before. This is from a time before Vince Russo put his grimy fingers all over the wrestling business, and it kind of proves that it's wall-to-wall garbage.
Yeah.
It's always been garbage. You are familiar with the Dungeon of Doom?
Of course.
Okay, so the Dungeon of Doom was a stable that was put together in WCW to, as Kevin Sullivan would put it, to just feed Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
Hulk Hogan was a good guy, so he needed lots of bad guys to make Hogan look good. So they just kind of fed him the entire Dungeon of Doom. Right?
But this was at a time as well where Hogan, as a babyface, was kind of running a bit stale. So he was getting booed a lot in a lot of shows, and they were trying to still, obviously push him as the big babyface and the biggest star in wrestling, but the crowd reactions weren't really going with that. So Kevin Sullivan's intent with the Dungeon of Doom was to have all these monsters to feed Hogan to get people cheering him again.
And that didn't work.
No, not at all.
Well, when you hear the litany of supervillains he had to fight against, You'll wonder why that never went as planned. You probably know half of these dudes. Is this one of the ones you wrote down? Because I had to write some of these down. I wrote the list of people who were in this stable down, and I'm like, this is by far, this might be worse than Misfits in Action.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
just by name alone, if you were to read this list of people, you're like, what the fuck? Do you remember any of these guys?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, we said Kevin Sullivan. So he was a Taskmaster, I think, was he?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
I think you also had Kamala in there.
Okay. I didn't have him. I'm writing him down.
Yeah. Obviously, we had the Giant, who was brought in and billed as Andre the Giant's son, looking for revenge for his father. We had the Zodiac, who was Brutus the Barber Beefcake, who'd already kind of come to WCW and like run through like a few different gimmicks. Like I think prior to the Dungeon of Doom, him, Kevin Sullivan, and it was Earthquake, but I think he was going by Avalanche possibly at that time. But they were known as the Three Faces of Fear, which is like sort of a prelude to the Dungeon of Doom.
Was that when he was he the disciple, or was that after that?
Yeah, that was after that. I think he was the disciple when he turned heel and joined the NWO. He'd basically grown a beard and like he changed his look, and no one recognized him.
Yeah. Okay. When was he the big bad booty daddy? What was the one? Was it, or was that am I thinking of Scott Steiner? He had some kind of like.
Yeah, it was the Booty Man, wasn't it?
Booty Man. Okay, that's Jesus Christ. Yeah, I remember because his finisher was a high knee.
Oh God, yeah.
And I'm like, what is it with this company and their shitty puns?
Yeah.
So yeah, okay, you got the Zodiac. I got him.
Mm-hmm.
Who? Okay, the Yeti. You remember the Yeti?
Oh, of course.
Yeti.
We mentioned Avalanche, but he changed his name to the Shark, and like even changed the tattoo on his arm to match a shark. And I think the gimmick got dropped about 3 months later or something.
Okay,
so
that's who I was gonna ask about, because I had written down the name the Shark, and I'm like, I don't know who the Shark is. Who is this wrestler? Okay, that would make sense. Good.
Mm-hmm.
Loch Ness.
Yeah, they brought over giant haystacks. Who at that point could barely move.
They called him Loch Ness.
Why? Was he from Scotland?
I don't think so.
No, I'm pretty sure he wasn't.
Who was the Master? Was that just another name for the Taskmaster, or was that a separate guy? Because that would get confusing.
Yeah, that was sort of the guy who brought the group together. Like when they were doing the early vignettes where it was like in some sort of creepy cave or whatever. Yeah, the Master was like this sort of old guy on the throne, you know, instructing Kevin Sullivan that he was going to be the Taskmaster for the Dungeon of Doom, and yeah, he'd bring them together to take out Hulk Hogan and kill Hulkamania. But I don't think he was around for very long. But I think he was Curtis Ikea. I'm not sure if his son was or his nephew or something like that was Prince Ikea, who came along afterwards. But I think he was like a famous wrestler back in the 60s and 70s.
Okay, so let's just have him hang out in a cave.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I have one more on my list that I really want to know the answer to. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because looking back at it now, might be one of the worst names I've ever heard. But who is the ultimate solution? Because I think if you were to walk around saying that shit these days, people aren't going to be too happy with you.
Yeah, it's not exactly
a
good name to be using.
Can you believe that? They call themselves the ultimate solution?
I believe that was the guy who went on to star in Batman and Robin as Bane. I don't know what other gimmicks he actually used when he was in wrestling, but yeah, he was Not exactly a big name or anything.
No. So is there anybody else? That was my list for the Dungeon of Doom. There's probably more, were there?
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, you had like the one man gang made an appearance. You had Big Bubba Rogers in there, Big Boss Man. I think old pal Hugh Morris was there as well.
You gotta do something.
Yeah. No Buff Bagwell, though.
I was expecting you to say that the old man in the Kiev was Buff Bagwell.
If only.
Like
But even
they see the guy in the Kiev and he's wearing like a kind of shroud, like a hood over him. But there's like you can clearly see there's a top hat underneath it. You're like, I think that's Buff Bagwell, dude.
do you remember the like trainer for the power plant called Sarge?
Yes.
He was in the Dungeon of Doom as well as Brawn the Leprechaun. Yeah.
Wait a minute now. That was information I was not able to acquire. Brawn the Leprechaun.
I don't really understand why he was a leprechaun, because he was like a full-grown man and
like 6 foot tall or whatever.
I don't think he was remotely Irish as well. So
no.
Yeah, it was kind of a weird choice, but I don't think it lasted very long, to be fair.
Now, there's another case of like, we've already made it clear that Kevin Sullivan said that stable was put together basically to feed Hulk Hogan, right?
Mm-hmm.
The person that stable was getting over, or supposed to be getting over, was Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
And that's why that stable would never have worked. No, nobody would give a shit about that stable because nobody was supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody could get behind any of those people other than their hatred of Hulk Hogan, which, made sense at the time because people were sick of Hulk Hogan. But just that alone isn't a good enough reason to think that those guys are worth paying attention to, because there's nobody to get behind or nobody to like highlight. It's just all just interchangeable. Clearly, just interchangeable dudes sat there to beat up Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, it's like doing the whole monster of the month kind of thing, but like when each monster loses, it just kind of lessens the credibility of the entire group that way, doesn't it?
Also, if the monster loses and then grows a beard and then comes back 6 months later as a different monster, that also doesn't help. But yeah, like after a while, you're like, well, stop fighting those monsters. It's not at all worth your time. You're definitely gonna win,
It's kind of scary how long that thing went on for as well. Like them just, constantly feeding these guys to Hulk Hogan for like a significant portion of 95 into 96. Like pretty much right up until the NWO formed. Like it was just like constant Dungeon of Doom, basically. So there's no wonder like, WCW were struggling a bit at the time.
Mm-hmm. And after the time.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any other stables on your list? I've got one more I want to talk about real quick.
Yeah, I've got one that sticks out as an old WWF one.
Ooh.
Well, it actually is WWE at the time, but it was the Spirit Squad. Which was apparently an idea that came directly from Vince McMahon. Like he, clearly was really enamored with this idea of male cheerleaders for some reason. So much so that they like brought them up without really having any kind of plan for them. It was just like, let's make some male cheerleaders and stick them on Raw. Okay. But yeah, it's kind of funny. Like the original group looked sort of the same, except it was Ken Doane, Nick Mitchell, Nick Namath, who obviously went on to become Dolph Ziggler, and it was supposed to be Elijah Burke as well.
Wow.
But yeah, he like turned down the chance to join the Spirit Squad because he kind of knew. I mean, sort of similar to Mercedes Martinez getting brought up as part of what they called Retribution.
Yes.
Yeah, and then bringing up her, and then she's like, "Nah, I don't want to do this." So yeah, it was a close call for Elijah Burke, and thankfully he got to come up and do his own thing and stand out on his own. But I mean, you just have to look at the careers of the other guys involved. Like aside from Dolph Ziggler, obviously, those other guys did nothing essentially. And they were good wrestlers, but they were just lumbered with this gimmick, which no one enjoyed and had the wrong sort of heat where it was essentially X-Pac heat, I guess. It was just like, go home. We don't want to see you. But yeah, they buried them.
I thought it was a good gimmick, man. It sounds like me and Vince McMahon are in the minority here, but like as a way to get heel heat, it made sense, right? But I think that a lot of the handling of that group was its own downfall. The booking of that group is horrendous.
Yeah.
Let's have them lose to DX 80 times in a row. Because I thought that they were annoying, and the fact that there were 5 of them should have made perfect like heel heat for them because they could cheat to win matches and shit. Like, it seemed like an interesting idea that I don't think they capitalized on properly, which is a shame because all those guys are way more talented. But like, it's a thing in wrestling, especially in WWE. Like, everybody can't just be the tough, cool heels, right? You gotta have some variety. And I'm like, well, as variety goes, the Spirit Squad are pretty up there, something different, and all those guys can work. So like, this could totally work. But I think they just dropped the ball with their booking of it, because they put these guys together, like you said, they brought them up with no idea what the fuck they were going to do with them. I'm like, well, who the Dolph Ziggler benefited from the group afterwards.
Yes,
but during the group, you couldn't tell them apart. You wouldn't have said that's the guy, because they were all kind of the same. They just didn't book him right.
Yeah.
Which I guess is shows you how good Dolph Ziggler is to get over it despite that whole business.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of disheartening as well that they, we see this was like, what, 2006, 2007, that sort of era. And you think, maybe WWE would learn their lesson in the nearly 15 years since then. But like, bringing up Retribution, it's the exact same thing where it could have been a cool idea. It could have been successful, and like you've got the talent there to kind of make it successful, but they've just been let down by the booking so badly and made to look like such losers that there's no saving them now. Like they're probably gonna get packed into a crate with a sticker saying "ship back to NXT" on it. So
yeah, and like that sucks, man, because I really like the idea of Retribution. I think it's great. I think as a stable, bingo, you've got Ali. You can highlight that guy and make him look like $1 million with these guys behind him. This should work. It's a cool concept, something interesting. It could work, but they just forgot about it. And like you said, he's lost so much momentum now. Like there's no credible use for that group because they all look like idiots. And I'm like, I think that's one of their biggest missed opportunities of recent times.
Yeah.
Maybe that sounds like an exaggeration, but I'm like, dude, that group could have been fucking sweet. So annoyed that they didn't do anything with them. But let me real quick bring up another group from the WWE that from the very start was destined for not good. Right? This is my last little pick. Social Outcasts.
Who was in that again?
Exactly. First of all, you don't even know who the fuck they are. Not a good look for the group. It's one of Heath Slater's groups.
Oh dear.
Who I believe is in like 4 different groups. He was in
NXT.
Social Outcasts, 3-man band. He was in Nexus.
That's the one.
And then I think he was in the Core as well.
Of course, the Core.
So across the board right there. Oh boy. Not hitting a whole lot of home runs.
Yeah.
So by the time the Social Outcasts came in, you've got Heath Slater as the leader. Bo Dallas, Curtis Axel, and Adam Rose. Now, if you look at all 4 of those people, by the time they group together into this stable, You already knew exactly where the stable was going.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Adam Rose had they again missed opportunity. They squandered him on the main roster. They had no idea for him, and then fuck him. Bo Dallas and Curtis Axel could have been great talents. Great talents. What do you do with them? Make them a comedy joke team, and then run them right into the ground, and then stick them in a stable with two other guys who are also ran into the ground. Like none of them had a chance. God damn it. Like that's what sucks. By the time the Social Outcasts came around, none of them had a chance at anything, and it's a shame because they're all really good, right?
Yeah.
But like if their role in life was to just be enhancement talent, to put other people over, right? You don't have to go down. You don't because the Job Squad didn't work.
Nope.
Right? I love those guys to death. I do, but that was a terrible group because everybody knew. That was in their fucking name. Everybody knew that the point of them was that they were just going to lose, right? Yeah. So what's the point of grouping all these losers together? No, you just have losers in close proximity to each other. There's no purpose for it. So it's the same with the Social Outcast. Like when you see those guys, you're like, nothing's going to happen here. They're going to lose in 2 minutes.
Well, that's the thing as well. Like they could have like got over to a certain extent. I mean, I guess they kind of did a little bit, like just from being themselves and doing their own thing. Whereas it was never going to go anywhere. Like no matter how popular they did get with the crowd, if at all, like it was never going to transform itself into anything bigger for them. That was like a kiss of death. That whole stable idea. It was just like, hey, you guys are going to be stuck in this stable because we've got no other creative ideas for you. So this is where you are.
Exactly. Like once they got to that point, they're like, this is as far as you're going to go. Like that's it on your, for life. You're not going any further than this. And they haven't.
Yeah.
They haven't. Like that's the thing. God knows what happened to Adam Rose now. Apparently he looks jacked as shit.
Yeah.
But what's weird is I've seen two different, like one of them is Adam Rose looks jacked as shit, and the other one is Adam Rose looks totally homeless now. I'm like, well, which one is it? He could be both. Like Curtis Axel, I think was released last year, and God knows where he's probably staying at home like a smart kid. Bo Dallas apparently still works for that company, but you wouldn't know it because he's never on TV. Not even to lose. Like that's the worst part. Not even to lose, just not seen. And Heath Slater turned up an Impact and then I think got injured.
Yes.
So not having a great time all around for those guys. I think that is a dang shame.
I always thought Curtis Axel, like if they had just introduced him as Joe Henning or like Mr. Perfect Jr. or anything like that, he would have had a completely different career. But being brought in as Michael McGillicuddy, which is a name which it screams jobber at you, like and then changing it to Curtis Axel, it was a nice nod to the past, but it was too little too late, and still there's no making up for the fact that he'd been Michael McGillicuddy for like 5-6 years at that point.
Yeah. That's it, man. Another like missed opportunity. I don't know why. I don't know why they do it, man. I don't know why they do it, but they do, and they'll probably continue to do it for some time. Yeah. So, like, here's the thing: in the midst of this casual chat, we already talked about or mentioned like the core that were terrible, and 3-man band, for example. So there's clearly like plenty of other stables out there. We didn't even touch on the oddities with the Truth Commission, who I didn't think were that bad. But again, like shitty booking, ruin. Again, Truth Commission back in the stables with the DOA and the Baruchwas and stuff.
Yeah.
Nobody give a shit, right? Because nobody won that fucking feud. But just like wrestling is full of really not good stables, So we covered a couple of them today. We might, like I said, there's plenty more to talk about. So we might come back to this one in the future, especially given when we see where this Bullet Club shit goes.
Yeah.
I have a feeling I know where this Bullet Club shit's going to go, but we just got to write it out and see where it's going to go. And so that's the show. Anything else you want to say?
Nope.
Okay, cool. Well, if you want to hear another episode about stables and factions and stuff like this, let us know. Let us know in the comments what your favorite ones were as well. And that's the show. Thank you very much for listening. We will see you in the next episode. Make sure to subscribe so you can stay up to date with all that shit. And we'll see you next week. So goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Ooh.